So it took me 20 years as a psychotherapist to realize that my greatest gift was also my biggest trap, especially outside of the therapy room. I've worked with thousands of people, high achievers, athletes, educators, stay at home parents, CEOs, and I started to pick up on a pattern. These people weren't primarily addicted to your stereotypical vices: alcohol, caffeine, work, sex. No. Their primary addiction was fixing people, fixing situations, fixing emotions. Because if they didn't have to feel it, then maybe. If they could fix it, then they wouldn't have to feel it. It was really hard for them to be in the presence of someone struggling. They were so quick to jump to action, give advice, offer solutions, find a quick fix, make it better. And from the outside, this does look like pure kindness. But underneath, it's interwoven with this quiet need for control, for predictability, for defined connection. Because again, if they could fix it, they wouldn't have to feel it. Now, empathy and compassion are two of the world's greatest gifts, and we need those two things now more than ever. But you know what I found is that the people that have the highest level of empathy and compassion tend to be the worst at setting and maintaining healthy boundaries. They are so good at telling and reminding everyone to take care of yourselves. Make sure that you say no. Make sure that you prioritize your self-care. But when it comes to them and themselves, they fall short. Guilt may be a deterrent. Looking inward might be too overwhelming. So they look out here and find their structure and sense of purpose with other people's struggles. When it's time to look inward, that's foreign. They don't have practice with that. Sometimes compassion is just our discomfort in disguise. So the sigh, the distress, that's what did it for me. And not as a clinician. As a clinician, I have boundaries, I have frameworks. But as a mother, as a wife, that sigh around my household, those disappointed, stressful looks, that derailed me. I found as a mother, as a wife, as a parent, as a friend, being 2 steps ahead meant that I was fixing and solving, meant that I was loving. I could feel compassion fatigue creep in slowly as I made space for everyone else except for myself emotionally. And this was confusing to me because I had a habit and consistency when it came to my physical health. But emotionally, I was always out here trying to fill the needs of everyone else without putting myself into the equation. Again, I thought fixing was love. I was on a rampage of serial fixing. And so, serial fixing, I started using this term, and a serial fixer, if you think about the word serial, it's something that we've identified a pattern with, right? And so when we're serial fixing, we are constantly putting ourselves in the role of the fixer and the solver, and oftentimes prematurely. And so there's a lot of emotional empathy, there's a lot of emotional intelligence, but serial fixers tend to jump in too quick. They tend to create safe places for people, encourage vulnerability. They tend to not be great at that, though, themselves, right? Their emotional intelligence tend to be high, but if they can take care of everything out here, if everyone else is okay and they have a hand in that, then they're okay. A serial fixer's motto might be, I'll endure, I'll accommodate, as long as they're okay, I'm okay. Now, this is not something that just happens. Serial fixing generally comes about from when we're at a young age, depending on how we were raised, the nature and environment of our families. We learned and made strong, rigid associations that fixing meant love, that being 2 steps ahead and suppressing what we feel maybe meant control, maybe meant calm. When we could help, when we could step in, That was the source that fueled our self worth. And so you can see that this not only sometimes is a trauma response, but we feed into the notion with these very rigid associations that leave us in these patterns feeling trapped, feeling exhausted, feeling and fueling imbalances in our relationships that can tend to be incredibly confusing. I'm working so hard to build connection and vulnerability. And why is this not happening? And so oftentimes we take the bait in conversations with our children, with our friends, with our partners. We hear a simple yes no question that might be interwoven with some distress or uncomfortable emotions. And we start to fill in the gaps. We begin to fix, find that solution, and not only to soothe their discomfort, but ours. Sometimes the more we fix, it's not necessarily to soothe what's out here, but also prevent the turmoil in here. So let's take parenting, for example. Parenting is something when our child comes home and they may share about their day and how stressed they are and this and that, and a serial fixer jumps immediately into action. Well, I'll call the teacher again. Let me make a note of this. I'll call the mom. Don't worry about it. What do you really have to worry about at this age? Because if the child can recover quickly, then the parent is soothed, and that association with being a good parent gets checked off. Sometimes this rigidity and these associations leave us in an all or nothing thinking pattern, black or white. We get very uncomfortable with the gray, very uncomfortable with seeing someone else in distress and something unresolved, because not only do we have to witness this, but we have to, in tandem, deal with the discomfort within us. This happens in the workplace as well. Teams are stressed, teams are struggling, and as a leader, you might see this and immediately begin to internalize. If there are people on my team who are perpetually stressed, don't have the practice or the know-how to ask directly, we internalize, well, I must not be a good leader then. I must not be a good parent then. If we're at home and we hear our partner, sighing, we hear the silences creeping in, we immediately internalize and think, well, I must be failing at this whole marriage thing. The more that we fix, the more that we're managing. And what's the important part about this is that when we begin to take a step back, when we begin to find the gray, when we begin to validate instead of jump 3 steps ahead in offering solutions, offering advice, prematurely relating, when we sit in the uncomfortable, we're leading with empathy, but also empowering. When we learn to validate by a pause, a simple head nod, eye contact, and paraphrasing or validating, it sounds like this has been a really rough week for you. We are in collaboration with someone. We are also sharing the message with them that you are feeling something really hard, but I have faith that you will be able to recover from it. When we jump in too quickly, especially as parents, we're communicating to our child who might be feeling disappointment that you can't handle that. Your feelings are too big, so I will manage them. This takes away the opportunity for empowerment, to get practice, to build intrinsic self-trust. The more repetitions we get, just like as an athlete, just with your physical health, you have to stay consistent and get your repetitions in. The same goes for our mental and emotional health. And when we jump in and fix and solve and take false ownership, we're creating these micro codependencies. And so let's take a step back. These parts of us that get in the way, that immediately are operating with urgency, that quickly say, fix, solve, soothe, because if you don't, you might not be a good parent. You might not be a good leader. You might not be a good partner. These parts of us are protective in nature, and they need soothed. They need to understand with practice, with you changing things up, with you allowing people to keep their own ownership as you come in and support. This is a way that you are empowering others at age 5 or 55 to build that intrinsic trust, to get their own repetitions in, to soothe those protective parts. within them. So picture a ball of yarn, picture a tangled ball of yarn. And every time someone had a problem, their tangled ball of yarn, you either grabbed it and tried to untangle it for them, or they threw it right to you and you caught them willingly. Now, 1, 2, 3 balls of yarn aren't heavy, but a whole big group of tangled balls of yarn, that's a lot. Think about what it would look like if you allowed everyone to hang tight of their ball of yarn while you still led with empathy and compassion and pulled at a few threads here and there, but communicated, interwoven in their distress, that you trust that they're going to be able to handle and recover. Support, don't solve. That's when we get our fix. That's when we empower and we lead with compassion at the same time. Support, don't solve.